Welcome to the 18th year of the Honors Senior Thesis Defenses. Thank you for taking the time out to be part of this celebration of 9 months of hard work. I want to acknowledge the following individuals who helped to keep this process going smoothly. First, the administration and faculty at Pulaski Academy for the support and encouragement for this program over the past 2 decades. Secondly, I want to thank my good friend Sarah Gorman, who was instrumental in setting up the promotional work for the thesis projects this year, as well as the technological advice and keeping things running smoothly. Third, and most importantly, from Isabella's perspective, I want to thank the committee members who served for this past 9 months on her committee, including Ms. Julie Hathcote, Caitlin Johnston, Ann Stepanova, and Sarah Gorman. Without their tireless effort in editing and encouraging in this brainstorming with Isabella, this project would not have come to fruition. Without further ado, I want to turn it over to Isabella. Thank you.
I'm Isabella, and this is my thesis, Plaguing the Mind, Depression as a Mood Disorder and the Effects of Negative Stigma. The purpose of this thesis is to address the stigma of depression in society and how its effects have negatively impacted the mental health community, and to present possible solutions for the stigma issue. I would like to say a special thank you to the interviews that I've conducted with Dr. Jarvis, who allowed me an inside view on what it's like to be a treating physician for patients with depression ranging from mild all the way to severe. And I would also like to note that I attended a support group meeting, and I would like to thank NAMI, it's the National Alliance of Mental Illness, for letting me sit in and join a group and listen to what it's like to have people with depression just talk about their life experiences. Chapter 1, The History and Evolution of Depression as a Mood Disorder. Depression has been identified as an illness dating back to prehistoric times through the undeniable symptoms of sadness and malaise. Philosophical thinkers and scientific researchers have all tried to contribute to the understanding of melancholia or depression. There exists a notable struggle throughout history in looking for an effective way to treat this complex disorder. There's conflicting evidence in the evolution of depression research as to whether it is a psychological or physical disorder, and these accounts have developed the strong foundation of understanding depression that helps us to advance research in the modern day. The studies of illness date back as far as 500 BCE from the Greeks and the Romans, all the way through the Middle Ages and Renaissance. Some of the earliest accounts even dating back to ancient Greece in the 12th century. Hippocrates is often regarded as the father of medicine, and he significantly contributed to early studies of depression, then referred to as melancholia. During Hippocratic times, illness was thought to manifest in a mostly physical form, with food and drink being the necessities for good health. Treatments such as bloodletting became popular. This process involved draining the blood from an individual's body in hopes to cleanse the illness. The Middle Ages and Renaissance also brought mental disorder to a new light within the walls of the church. The church identified mental disorder as an inner battle between God and Satan for the soul. Because of the church's heavy influence during these times, treatments of mental disorders were often directed to the clergy rather than to medical doctors or medicinal healers. Medicine was thought to be reserved only for physical ailments, and the treatments of choice became a heavy routine of prayer and fasting. For over 1,000 years, demonology took control as the main explanation of mental disorder, and barbaric treatments began to arise. In medieval Europe, melancholy was a sign that one was living a sinful life and needed repentance, while severe melancholy was often a sign of demonic possession. About the time of the 1800s, a wave of reforms began to wash over how mental disorders were addressed and treated. In the open-minded era of the Renaissance, depression was even viewed as fashionable, as people believed that depression was linked to genius or creativity. Depression became a trend and was included in various plays, works of art, and even music. One of the most famous examples is Shakespeare's Hamlet, which portrays a character facing obvious depressive behaviors. During the Age of Enlightenment, it was believed that depression was an inherited, unchanged level of weakness of temperament. This also sparked the ideas that people with mental disorders were considered dangerous, thus inducing a wave of institutionalization. Some theories became advanced and adapted to the growing globalized world. An 18th century English physician named George Shen is a perfect example. He developed the theory that melancholy could be caused by the growing comforts and luxuries caused by the modern industrialization. He believed that those living in rural areas and participating in daily labor were far more energetic and content than those living in industrialized cities. Other scientists agreed with this theory as they found larger groups with depressive symptoms in the aristocratic class. It was thought that the best remedy for all these evils is exercise or labor. For many years, it's been difficult to set apart depression from other illnesses of the mind. Many symptoms are generic and can cover a vast majority of diagnoses. In 1895, the German psychiatrist Emil Kraepelin first distinguished depression from schizophrenia. This was a large breakthrough because the two mental illnesses expressed the same symptoms of general sadness or episodes of psychosis. In today's society, depression, now referred to as major depressive disorder, is defined as a common but serious medical illness that negatively impacts the way that people feel, think, and act. It causes feelings of sadness or loss of hope and can cause people to lose touch with others or to lose interest in hobbies and daily life. People with depression in the modern age struggle because depressive episodes can make a person unable to function at an acceptable level, which can in turn add even more stress if said person is relied on at their job or in their homes. It is estimated that depression affects 1 in 15 adults in any given year, and 1 in 6 people will have a depressive episode of some form at any point in their lives. Although the onset of depression can occur at any time, it on average first appears when people are in their late teens entering their mid-20s. It is argued that the increasing levels of depression are due to the increased number of factors in modern society. Different stressors such as social media and societal expectations in the modern age are both thought to have contributed largely to the increased amounts of depression, especially in adolescence. Social media is creating a society that feels that they have higher standards to live up to, and people are becoming depressed as they are constantly faced with media that reminds them that they are disconnected and missing out on fitting in with others. In today's society, people struggle under the pressures of maintaining a good job and being able to pay off debts, and become depressed as they cave into the stress of these daily pressures. Chapter 2, The Depressing Truth. There have been many presented theories as to why depression has increased in prevalence since it has first appeared as an area of research for doctors and psychiatrists. Part of the issue is that the criteria for diagnosing major depression disorder have changed vastly and has become so generic that doctors are not making the distinction between normal emotional occurrences and a real mental illness diagnosis, thus leading to overdiagnosis of the disease. An issue with an overdiagnosis is the number of diagnoses rise while some credibility is lost about the severity and importance of the disease itself. Since doctors are mistaking depression for simple episodes of normal sadness or emotional fatigue. One of the first presented theories for the rise in depression prevalence is the general rise in psychopathology. Psychopathology is the study of mental disorders. Psychiatric disorders are often shown to have high comorbidity, the presence of one or more additional conditions co-occurring with a primary condition, as drug and alcohol abuse typically go in conjunction with illnesses such as depression. There is also an alarming decrease in mental health supports, which also may play a role in the rise of depression. One of the most interesting theories to explain the depression prevalence is the analysis of basic environmental changes. Obesity is often viewed as the prime disease of modernity, and along with obesity comes the undeniable deterioration of health that is likely a contributing factor to the rising prevalence of depression. Compared to those of a normal weight, those who are overweight and suffering the effects of obesity are at a highly increased rate for developing severe health complications and an overall lower quality of life. Obese individuals have a 55% increased risk of developing depression compared to those at a normal weight level, and depressed individuals are 58% more likely to become obese than those who are not depressed. In relation to obesity, the modern Western diet is a direct contributor to the incidence of obesity seen in America. The Western diet, with its lack of nutritional value, alters the metabolic and endocrine functions of the body, thus deteriorating quality of life. There are 7 characteristics that are used to specifically identify the Western diet. These characteristics are glycemic load, fatty acid composition, macronutrient composition, micronutrient density, acid-base balance, sodium-potassium ratio, and fiber content. A large prospective study found that individuals following the Mediterranean diet trend were less likely to have self-reported depression development. A Mediterranean diet includes eating whole, unprocessed foods with a large focus on lean meats and steamed vegetables. Surveys on physical activity levels in the United States show that less than half of adults engage in the recommended amount of physical activity, with a shocking 37.6% to be completely inactive. In a general population, physical activity directly correlates with a reduced risk of depression and sedentary behavior with a higher risk. Aerobic exercise has even been proven to be as effective a treatment as a standard dose of an antidepressant medication. There are even some seemingly insignificant parts of life, such as the amount of light exposure you receive, which can contribute to the amount of depression that people experience. Seasonal affective disorder, also known as SAD, is a condition in which the environment has a negative impact on a person's emotional state, usually causing episodes of sadness or depression. Decrease in exposure to bright light and dysregulation in the body's circadian rhythms are both the proximate cause for this diagnosis. This usually occurs in the wintertime when the days become shorter and the sun sets at an earlier time. Normal exposure to light promotes a healthy and well-functioning endocrine system, which is in charge of the release of serotonin and dopamine hormones. The regulated release of these hormones is vital to maintaining happy emotions and mental states. There is accumulating evidence that the social environment in modern industrialized countries, especially the United States, are becoming increasingly competitive. This competition creates an environment that is very socially isolating. Increase in competition, easily seen in college admissions and economics as people compete for job opportunities on a global scale. The onset of a major depressive episode almost directly coincides with stressful life events and inequality. Low social support, individual competitiveness, and social failure are all also factors that can contribute to the increase of stressful situations. Higher rates of depression are found among commonly in people who face an elevated level of adversity. It is found that capitalist values can often lead to poorer well-being as the focus is moved away from a person's health and onto things such as jobs or money. In today's society, the youth are moving away from ideals of friendship and community health and onto ambitions of money, status, and appearance. The levels of inequality have led to social distrust, competition, and status anxiety. People are becoming increasingly more concerned with how they are perceived by others rather than how their health is being taken care of. The roots of the stigma monster. One of the biggest issues that has arisen with the depression disease is the issue of societal stigma. Stigma refers to the common thoughts that society has about a mental disorder, in this case, depression. Stigma has become such an issue because it has mostly been in a negative light. Media portrayals and past events have caused people to frown upon individuals suffering with depression. In combination with these things have created a large negative stigma that negatively impacts the already poor mental state of mentally ill individuals. Depression in the technology age. Elaf Youssef was a student at UC Berkeley and was home on a break from school when she began to experience a wave of emotions that she could not explain. I pulled into the driveway, my sleeves soaked from subtly wiping my tears. My unexplainable occasional sadness lingered like my worried mother who stood by the door heartbroken, waiting for things to make sense again. I don't know what's wrong and I don't know why I feel this way, but I promise I'm fine and it will pass. That's what I tell myself when I'm walking down the street and I feel the tears rolling down my face. This generation, one that has grown up with technology in their laps, is often referred to as the iGen. These individuals appear to be some of the happiest people as they post their exciting and smiling lives on the internet for the rest of the world to see. The reality is quite dark as the iGen is facing one of the most severe mental health crises for youth in decades. In today's society, it seems that everyone is promoting an overbearing level of positivity, especially on the internet. Social media allows people to only post the happy moments of their lives while seemingly disregarding the sad ones. Chapter 3. Looking at depression treatments and their shortcomings. Overall, depression is a complex mental illness that requires special care and time to treat. Through the years, different treatments have been made available to depression patients and mental health patients alike. These treatments have evolved with modern technology, but are still lacking the effectiveness that is needed for depressed individuals to pursue a happy and depression-free life. This portion will dive further into the treatments involved in treating major depression disorder, along with discussing some issues with current treatments and their effects. Psychotherapy is one of the most common treatments for major depressive disorder. These sessions involve a patient consistently meeting with a licensed therapist to verbally discuss their concerns or issues. The patient and therapist must both be actively involved in the sessions to ensure a trusting relationship is built. A strong relationship between the therapist and the patient is crucial for the psychotherapy to be effective and for the patient to receive full benefits of the treatment. This helps with issues including difficulties coping with daily life, the impacts of severe trauma, medical illnesses or losses, and specific mental disorders. Along with psychotherapy, one of the most common treatments for major depressive disorder is the use of antidepressant medications. Antidepressants come in various different classes and categories, all aimed at trying to fix a specific symptom or problem area within a patient. Although antidepressants are very beneficial to patients, they are not as developed as they should be, and they come with a host of dangerous side effects. The significant side effects that accompany antidepressant medications have become a major reason that individuals do not wish to start taking these medications, even with the chances that their depression may improve. Some side effects are more common with different types of drugs, and different side effects tend to accompany different classes of antidepressant medications. One major risk when taking an antidepressant medication is known well as the black box warning. This is a warning for taking antidepressant medications because when being compared to those not on antidepressant medication, it was found that individuals taking the medicines had a higher rate of suicide. This is a startling side effect and has driven many people away from wanting to take antidepressant medication or let their loved ones take it. After further investigation, scientists found that it wasn't the medications themselves causing the increased suicides, but the energy boost received once beginning treatment. In other words, the medication would not cause you to have suicidal thoughts, but if you had suicidal thoughts prior to starting antidepressant medication, the medicine can boost your energy, giving you the means to carry out any suicidal thoughts or plans you had previously had. With a massive influx of people seeking psychiatric help, there are no longer enough psychiatrists to see patients. A physician search firm, Merritt Hawkins, states that the shortage of psychiatrists is an escalating crisis. The gap is of more severity than shortages faced in virtually any other specialty. Patients are having to wait weeks to months to get an appointment with a mental health professional, or even traveling hundreds of miles to the nearest practice. This lack of access to mental health care leaves many people without options to seek help. The need for psychiatrists is expected to increase as the available number of mental health supports is expected to drop, with an estimate of demand surpassing supply about 15,000 psychiatrists by 2025. Chapter 4, Policy Recommendations. One of the best ways to significantly reduce negative stigma surrounding mental illness is through education. By publishing writings about stigma and its effects, a wider audience is reached and discussion is provoked, often resulting in awareness and knowledge about the issue. While contributing to some of the stigma, the internet is also a helpful resource in its ability to publish information for the public to see. Education must start at the professional level, so doctors can realize the importance of mental illnesses and include mental health screenings in their routine exams. By including these screenings, they are destigmatizing mental health issues and providing people with more access to help should they be experiencing any mental health issues. Just as doctors screen for common illnesses during routine checkups, by completing screenings for depression and other mental illnesses, they can direct individuals to proper care before their symptoms become severe or even deadly. Aside from the professional level, schools, workplaces, and welfare services are also some of the most important places to institute mental health information and education. It can be as simple as doctors giving patients pamphlets about mental illnesses and their common symptoms following routine checkups. Education is a very simple and easy way to spread positive thoughts about mental illnesses, yet it is a very effective method. With such an easy method at our disposal, education programs appear to be one of the best options to fighting the mental health stigma, especially the ones surrounding depression. Promoting an education of mental health issues at all levels is key to bridging the gap between society and individuals with mental illnesses and eliminating the harmful mental health stigma. I would like to close the presentation with a quote. When you come out of the grips of a depression, there is an incredible relief, but not one that you feel allowed to celebrate. Instead, the feeling of victory is replaced with anxiety that it will happen again, and with shame and vulnerability when you see how your illness affected your family, your work, everything left untouched while you struggled to survive. We come back to life thinner, paler, weaker, but as survivors. Survivors who don't get pats on the back from coworkers who congratulate them on making it. Survivors who wake to more work than before because their friends and family are exhausted from helping them fight a battle they may not even understand. I hope to one day see a sea of people all wearing silver ribbons as a sign that they understand the secret battle, and as a celebration of the victories made each day as we individually pull ourselves up out of the foxholes to see our scars heal, and to remember what the sun looks like. Jenny Lawson, Furiously Happy, a funny book about horrible things.
Yay!
Nicely done. Let's go back to August. And what would you do differently regarding interview data? What did you see as some missed opportunities in the primary area in this project? What would you do differently?
I would probably definitely get some more primary resource information, just so I kind of maybe could have gotten more of like insider look on interviews from people living with depression, treating depression, or potentially, interviewing people that work in welfare systems, learning about how they deal with depression as an illness and trying to compensate or provide for these people. That's probably something that I would have done different.
Good, good. You said that 1 in 15 individuals suffered from depression. How is that, and that's current data, how has that changed over the last few decades as we've seen a more kind of intense, globalized society, driven society with technology and such? How has that number changed over the last few years?
Can I interject something there? Sure. Is that 1 in 15 number, is that worldwide, or is that like in America, or?
It's US.
Yeah,
US, okay.
That number has definitely seen an increase from like the 1990s up to like the 2015s. The increase in the age group has obviously moved down quite a bit. So rather than being adults suffering from depression, there's been a significant surge in adolescents and teens seeing depression and depressive episodes. But the number has that number has increased significantly from about the 1980s, 1990s, almost nearly doubled.
I do want to mention you used the iGen book a lot, maybe overused it a bit in the thesis. It is a great read. I think all the teachers at Pulaski Academy would benefit from it because it deals so much with adolescent depression and technology addiction. But it was a very useful source. I'll let the committee, since we have 4 committee members, I'm going to let them chime in. Ms. Stefanova, do you want to go next?
Actually, I have a whole page of questions and comments, so we probably need to have another side conversation. One of the things I thought was interesting was when you were talking about how your policy recommendations, when we need to make mental health screening part of, physical, when we get an annual physical from the doctor, how are we training our general practitioners? Because, if you break a leg, you go.
I think we lost Isabella.
Okay.
Oh,
I saw
so
that.
let's just pause for a minute.
There's so many people on.
Yeah, I bet she just accidentally hit a closeout button. She'll be back in a moment.
I was kicked off momentarily too, so there she
is.
Go ahead, Ms. Steph.
Isabella, my question was about treatment. So when we go to our general practitioner, if you have, issues with your hearing, they'll send you to a specialist. Or if you have a broken bone, they'll send you to an orthopedic surgeon or whatever. So are we doing a better job of training our GPs to screen for mental health, or do they are they told to quickly pass you off to a specialist? Or I know personally of many students, friends whose GP is prescribing them antidepressants. And, you know, do you think that is a responsible path of treatment? Or should we be treating this as a specialty like we do many other things?
First off, I would say yes, it definitely is something that needs to be treated as a specialty. And one of the most shocking things that I came across in my research is the fact that mental health professionals themselves actually discriminate against mental illnesses like depression, like within their own field. I researched in a study that they conducted of med school students and their opinions on mental health and that treatment. And many of the students in med school expressed that mental health issues were not of their concern, that they weren't becoming doctors to treat people that were sad. They were becoming doctors to treat people that were sick. And so there's actually such a significant amount of doctors that believe that it's not an illness, it's they're doctors. They're here to treat genuinely sick people, and these aren't sick people. And that's part of the reason that many people won't bring up their symptoms to their doctors, because they might even receive some sort of like stigmatizing backlash from their own general practitioners. But it's definitely something that needs to be screened for and sent to a professional. Just how you wouldn't break a bone and your general practitioner wouldn't try to put a splint on you. Someone that's a psychiatrist is severely, like, they're like very knowledgeable about the brain chemistry, and depression is a brain illness. It's a malfunction of the chemicals in the brain, and that's not something that a general practitioner specializes in. Therefore, it should be treated by a specialist.
Let's shift around here with Julie or Sarah next, and then we can loop back if we need to.
I'll go ahead and jump in. Isabella, great job. I'm very proud of you. My question is about stigma. You know, I very much agree that there's a huge stigma surrounding not just depression, but any type of mental health disorder. You know, right now we're all living through a really tough time, right? And so do you believe that this universal experience that we're having now with coronavirus and how tough times are for all of us, do you think that might help decrease some of that negative stigma around depression and other mental health disorders? Because, you know, we're dealing with things that maybe, you know, are a new normal and throwing people into experiences that they haven't had before?
I definitely think that that can be more eye-opening for people. On the flip side, this is like my personal opinion, and from what I've experienced, I believe that it can also make things kind of worse, because in a way, there are so many people that are experiencing things and they're like, oh, I'm missing my graduation, I'm so depressed, or I'm stuck at home, I'm so depressed. And like, these aren't people that are living with major depression disorder. These are people going through a hard time. And there's a significant difference between a mental illness diagnosis and like a rough patch in life. And by people saying those kinds of things, it kind of like negates the feelings of people with mental illnesses that are actually in these situations, you know, struggling to survive, struggling to live through these hard times, as they're even more burdensome on them.
Julie?
Yeah, that was almost exactly what my question was. But first of all, Isabel, you've done such a phenomenal job with all of this. Your presentation was so well poised, and you are just a joy to work with. So great job there.
Thank you.
But my question was kind of based around the information that you've gathered. Do you feel like the effects of COVID-19 would have a drastic effect on depression in the long term? Like you said, I know that some people now are feeling down because of situations, but do you feel like this global pandemic is going to have a lasting effect on depression?
I definitely think that the effects will be long lasting. I think that for people that have, a major depression diagnosis, this experience is going to be something that is increasingly, devastating for them. I'm not sure on the specifics of the data, but I would almost guarantee an increase of, suicides or like depressive relapse episodes due to the like isolation of people with depression. And it's, from what I know, like doing telemedicine it's manageable, but the face-to-face contact that many people with depression need with their therapist, or like that time that they require in order to, properly treat their illness, not receiving that can be kind of detrimental to their like treatment track. And I definitely think that it can put a lot of people off of their, healing journey, and in turn cause a lot of people with depression to have a bit of a spiral following the effects.
Mhm.
All right, Ms. Johnson.
I also have a small book here to ask you, so I'll ask you on our own time. But a few things. I mean, this is such a huge topic. I mean, it's the scope of just situations and diagnoses, and I mean, it's just huge. And like you were alluding to, and I really appreciate the fact that yes, this time is difficult for everyone, and it might even trigger some depressive outcomes that are more long-term and maybe more of a medical. But I would have to agree with you. There's a difference between going through a rough patch and being in depression. Whereas, I wonder, because this is such a huge topic, and it's personal to you and it's personal to me, and I think, whether people admit it or not, it's personal to most people. I feel like it's such a huge topic. Did you struggle really narrowing down how you wanted to address this topic? And in that same light, do you think maybe, thinking of it as a spectrum, a spectrum, I mean, between major and minor, between terminal and temporary, environmental and biological, physical and chemical versus, more of a mental and behavioral. I mean, it's such a huge encompassing thing. I mean, triggers and all these things. Do you think that perhaps how we diagnose it should be more on kind of a spectrum, and maybe that spectrum isn't linear? Maybe it's like a web. Maybe it's a web. And this kind of goes in with, the difference between a counselor, a psychologist, and psychiatrist. Those are three different routes that you can take in the profession to kind of help. And I wonder what your thoughts on maybe graphing this. People who are more visual might understand depression more in a visual way. Like, how would you graph this in that way?
Well, first of all, I want to point out that when talking to Topich about doing this project, I learned that nobody has ever done a thesis on depression.
Really? Which
in itself should say something about the, how much we talk about this problem. And, it is so huge. I could go on like forever, like trying to like talk and explain. But I definitely think that there should be like some kind of spectrum that people are dealt with, like based on like being mild to like being really severe. And back to like what Ms. Stefanova said, it definitely needs to be like directed to like specialists. Like from like personal experience, I have seen people like being prescribed like antidepressants from like a nurse practitioner, or someone that has never studied psychology, someone that is not aware of how the brain is functioning, like to the extent that a psychiatrist is. And so I think that recognizing that some people are on like the more severe end of a scale, like those people need to be directed to like a proper professional. And even with the medications, I think that there's such a stigma, and I think that needs to be dealt with also, because so many people just refuse to take antidepressants because they are in denial. They're like, I'm not depressed, or I'm fine, I'm happy, like I don't need that. And so there's so many people that are missing out on the help that they need because of their fear of society rejecting them for what they have to do for themselves.
Yeah, and I think to that degree, it's also, this fear of misdiagnosing on the same. I mean, I think some people might be afraid of making that decision to have medication because maybe they are actually aware that it's situational and environmental and not so much physical.
And I even read in one of my things, there was a woman who gave her statement. Her brother he struggled with severe major depression, and he went to the doctor complaining of like frequent headaches and just like not feeling well, and they wrote it off. Oh, it's his depression, it's his depression. 2 weeks later, he was diagnosed with a severe brain tumor and passed away.
Mm-hmm.
You know, once you tell someone you have depression, it's, oh, they're depressed. It's everything is, it's their depression. It's not taken seriously.
Yeah. And on the opposite end, I was 10 years old when my father died, and I obviously acted out after that and had some issues, but my doctor prescribed me an antidepressant that was actually more like a tranquilizer. It was a multi-symptom kind of thing, but in reality, my father had just died, and I probably just needed to talk it through. And so I think there are different routes to take. And yes, thank you.
Sarah?
Thank you. Isabella, great job, girl. And we've talked psychology, we've talked all the mental stuff through the years, and I love you, all that stuff. I'm going to try to ignore this one here. Here's my question. So you mentioned about social media, and so many of us have either worked with that preteen, that teen age, and of course the upper school age students, and obviously my littles. Now that you've researched this topic, you're also an 18-year-old who has her Instagram channel, her songs, her YouTube. I get that. So I want you to put on your researcher hat as well as your 18-year-old hat. And if you could give advice, because I hear so much from our older teens, they say, Ms. Carnahan, don't get an iPhone for your kid. Don't get social media for your kids. Like, y'all give me advice on what to do for my kids and what you wish you had known. So you, with this researcher hat, and then with this, you're a teen, right? If there's something you wish your teen self, or not even personally for you, is there something you would advise these preteens what they could do, or just not to get sucked into the world of Instagram, Snapchat, all that, because we know what it does. The adults, we know what it does to them. But I want this two hat. You love it. You have your channels, but your research brain is on. I would like to know what you faced with that and that juxtaposition.
I definitely think, you can't prevent it. It's so out there. I mean, it's practically impossible to just not ever give your teenager a phone or ever keep them from using social media. It's going to happen. It's inevitable. And I know it is. And, it's even it still affects me. Looking at things, even during this COVID, seeing people posting pictures, anging out in big groups, makes me feel upset, and it's something that's it's not avoidable. But advice that I would say is just, there needs to be a push for people to, understand, especially the middle schoolers that are so impressionable. I have a sister who's graduating 8th grade, watching her in middle school and getting so, devastated by seeing these things on social media, and she's why am I not having that life or something like that. And I think that it just needs to be pushed that it is not real. What we're seeing is not real. It's doctored. It's a doctored reality. People are taking these tiny moments of good in their life, and they're putting it for everyone to see. You're not seeing, the bad that follows or the bad that prefaces it. You're only seeing all those good moments. And so comparing yourself to that is going to ruin you. And so I think that it just needs to be known, and it just needs to be pushed on these kids that are coming up that what they're looking at is not real. Like, it's like a magazine. It's been photoshopped. It's not reality.
Also, when you and your sister are in the library and y'all talk together and you're very sweet together, parents, you're a great big sister. And I know you tease her and she teases you, but y'all are as sweet as can be. And y'all are great siblings.
Thank you.
We probably need to cut it off. We have Miles Collins coming up in just a few minutes. This could have gone on, I bet, for a good hour or two. Outstanding questions. Great job, committee. Great job, Isabella. Thank you all for attending, and hopefully I'll see you at 4 o'clock. Take care.
Isabella, you did great.
Thank you.
Isabella.
Bye.
I choose to be late to Miles's presentation so I can just